Hello, and welcome to Dear SQL DBA, a podcast that's usually for SQL Server developers and database administrators, but today is for just about anybody who's interested in listening to a discussion about anxiety. Now, trigger warning for this episode, I'm going to be talking about topics that I don't usually talk about in the podcast. Today, I'm not answering a reader's question. Today, I'm talking about my own personal story. I'm not talking tech, and along the way, I'll be bringing up things like healthcare, religions, emotions, and I will be using curse words periodically. So if this just isn't your thing, if you're in the car driving with young kids or whatever, maybe you want to skip this episode, catch me for another one. I totally get it. Just wanted to let you know up front at the beginning of the episode that it is going to be a little bit different. So that being said, the title of this episode is, I thought I was an introvert. Turns out I was anxious as fuck. And today I'm telling my story about anxiety. It's a story that took me a little bit by surprise. Last spring, I developed this weird relationship with my stove. And as strange as that sounds, it's the thing I noticed the most. I started finding myself being really worried about whether or not I had accidentally left on the stove. Now, I have a stove in my kitchen that I really like cooking with. It has gas burners. I love cooking with gas, literally. But I kept thinking, did I turn off that burner? And I would go and I would check it. And then I, would leave the house to walk the dog or go someplace, and I would think, did I turn that off? Now, I think I checked it, but maybe I actually checked that yesterday. I should go back and check again. And then sometimes, a third time, I would go back and check it, and then I would leave again, and then I would think, is it really off? Did I make sure? And this got to the point that it wasn't just when I was alone. I would be leaving the house with my partner, and I would be worried. I would need to go back multiple times to check the stove. And I realized this isn't normal. I haven't always had this relationship with my stove, and I've had gas stoves before. This is really weird, but I couldn't just make this stop. And if I didn't go back and check the stove, I would worry about it for a long time after I left the house. I also noticed that I felt kind of weird when I was alone. Like if I was driving on an errand somewhere, I had this strange feeling, kind of like I was on standby. Now, a little bit of a SQL Server analogy. In SQL Server, we have, sometimes standbys, like a log shipping standby that's just sitting there. It's got lots of functionality and you can fail over to it. And I almost felt like I was one of those standbys. I was still perfectly safe. It's just, I didn't feel fully 100%. I didn't really feel present. And I didn't really have words to explain this either. There were other things too. There was a biking trip that I really wanted to go on with some folks from my gym. And it was this awesome trip. It was fully supported. Now it was in this gorgeous area in Oregon that I'd never been to before that I really wanted to see. Friends were going on this trip. People I was really excited to spend time with. There was even like a van that was along. So if you got tired, you could ride in the van with your bike. And this is really like a no shame, have fun kind of group, a great opportunity. And I was all signed up, but I was really nervous about the trip. And I just kept going back and forth. I'm going to go. I'm not going to go. I'm going to go. I'm not going to go. It was really stressing me out. And I didn't know why I didn't want to go. I was afraid. I don't know what I was afraid of. In general, I felt really vulnerable and dependent. I felt like if any of the supports in my life, if something really bad happened, that I didn't know what I would do. I felt like life was really vulnerable in general, and my life was really vulnerable. And these feelings weren't feelings that I'd never felt before, but I'd never had anything quite this strong. I'd never had this checking behavior with the stove. I'd never felt quite so vulnerable that things might just fall apart. And the thing that was very noticeable about it to me is there wasn't an apparent cause of this. These feelings and these behaviors that I had no idea why they were happening, because my life was really great there, and I was doing lots of things right. I was regularly exercising. I was getting a good amount of sleep. I was really paying attention to the quality of food I ate and making sure that I ate enough food, but not too much food. I'd recently, been sort of steadily and slowly losing weight in a healthy way. I'd lost about 40 pounds. And when you lose a significant amount of weight, you get a lot of positive feedback from folks. So all of these things should have added up to feeling good about myself. I was enjoying what I was working on. I was keeping healthy work hours. Luckily, knock on wood, my family was very healthy. I mean, things were good, but yet I had this very strange relationship with my stove. And then I started kind of having a strange relationship with my garage door. Did I close it? Is it still closed? Is the garage door still closed? Let's just check it one more time. So I felt like something was going just sort of oddly in my, behaviors that didn't have, a rational explanation. My work was still going well. I was still doing lots of stuff well. But I was afraid to see my doctor. This isn't because my doctor is bad. My doctor is a great doctor. I don't fear going to see my doctor. What I was afraid of is I buy my own health insurance and I live in the United States. And I was afraid that if I have a mental health issue and I go and talk to my doctor about it, and this goes on my record, maybe in the future, maybe I'm not going to be able to get health care anymore, right? Maybe I'll get put in a special category of people, and either it's harder for me to get care, or providers reject me, or it costs even more than it costs now. And this was a really weird fear to me. And this is a terrible fear. And it's a horrible position to be in when you want to seek medical help, but you're afraid to because you're worried that it will impact your future ability to get medical help. At a certain point, you have to wonder, what is the point of health insurance if your fear of the future of health insurance prevents you from getting help? And I finally decided it's more important to address my current health and to try to be healthy now. That is much more important than my fear of what may happen in the healthcare system in the future. In the future, I will worry about the future, but right now, in the moment, it is important to use my resources and to try to be the healthiest person I can, which will hopefully help me be healthier in the future too. So I was really, I was flipping back and forth about that bike trip and, making sure my stove was off. My stove was really turned off. And I decided, okay, you can allow yourself to not go on this bike trip, right? Just give yourself permission to explain, I need to take care of myself right now. I'm not going to be able to make it on the trip, but you also need to make an appointment with your doctor. So I made an appointment with my doctor, and I did, I at this point, I'd made a decision about the bike trip instead of waffling, which at least kind of resolved it. And when I finally went and talked to my doctor, it wasn't too long, but when I went and talked to my doctor, I burst into tears, which I hadn't really been expecting when I described, what I had been experiencing. I realized that, I basically said, I don't even deserve to be anxious or depressed, right? I'm a very lucky person. I have all these things going well for me. I've been making, lots of great progress with my health and my exercise. Like I don't deserve to have a problem. And I hadn't realized that feeling of guilt and not deserving to have a problem, I hadn't realized that I had that until I went and talked to my doctor. My doctor was really helpful, really supportive, and spent good time with me, talked a lot about brain chemistry, things that I don't know well enough to reiterate. But basically said, this isn't a matter of deserving or not deserving. And sometimes mental health issues can happen that aren't due to childhood trauma. Sometimes your brain chemistry can change and the way that we handle it is complex. And there's no shame in going to your doctor and in asking for help. We decided, my doctor and I together, and other doctors in the practice. There's another doctor who I spoke with who's more of a specialist in folks who are experiencing things like anxiety. We decided on a combination of medication as well as behavioral therapy. And they basically said medication can help. It's not always effective. And we did work together to try to make sure, to get the kind of minimum viable medication that had the least, negative effects, but kind of helped me out. But they recommended also that I see a specialist for anxiety, for that checking behavior, and also to work out different kinds of behavioral changes in my life so that hopefully I don't always need medication. Because I said, I don't like taking medicine. I don't always want to be on medicine. And my doctor said, many times this can be, we can work with that. I want you to be on it for a certain amount of time, but also this is something that many people can successfully get off of, that many people in the world do need to seek, help for this. And there's different ways that you can get through this. It's not like you're sick forever type thing. So based on the recommendations from my doctor and his practice, I found a counselor who specializes in cognitive behavioral therapy and works with people who have anxiety problems. I met with my counselor 5 or 6 times. And this was something we talked about in the beginning, is that the help that she provided me with we weren't talking about my childhood. We weren't talking about deep therapy, because I don't feel any relationship with my unhealthy relationship with my stove, with childhood. I just don't see there being any cause with this. She talked about how anxiety works. And one of the interesting things in the beginning of working with my therapist is just identifying even when I am anxious. I said, it's interesting. I do a lot of public speaking and I don't get anxious when I give a presentation. But as we were working through the process and she was explaining to me some of the physical symptoms of anxiety, I thought about it and I realized, this is kind of a story I tell myself. In fact, this really is a story that I tell myself, that I don't get anxious during presentations, because after I give a 1-hour session or a full day session, afterwards I am exceedingly tired. Like, all of the symptoms that I get after the presentation is just this huge aftermath of physical feelings of, all of this adrenaline leaving my body, and just repetitive thoughts about, what did I say? Could I have said it better? Did I understand that question well? Just cycling the present, not being able to stop kind of going through what happened in my brain, even if I'm not accomplishing anything. And I came to recognize I enjoy public speaking. I have for years. But there definitely has been an anxiety that I haven't acknowledged to myself, that I experience during the presentation, and I somehow delay a lot of the effects of it. Perhaps even some of the heightened awareness has been helpful to me of, whoa, okay, I'm really paying attention now. But after the presentation, there's this aftermath that's really hard to get through. And that it's not just that I want to have a less stressful relationship with my stove, but also, hey, if I work on this, maybe I can enjoy presenting more. Maybe I can enjoy speaking more. Maybe it can be easier to recover afterwards. And this could really make my work life just much more fulfilling. This could make a lot of things more enjoyable. And in addition to talking with my therapist, I also started listening to some books on cognitive behavioral therapy and anxiety, as well as reading them, just sampling what people have written about it and helpful practices. And I got a lot of these books for free. The therapy wasn't free, but it wasn't as expensive as I thought it would be. And like I said, I didn't have to do hundreds of sessions or anything like that. These books, a lot of them I got the libraries in the United States. You can get a lot of books, audiobooks and ebooks for free if you join your public library and then sign up online. And a lot of these books, in fact, all of them that I read and listened to, I was actually able to get for free. And I just started finding this interesting as a topic. It became a research area of me based on the recommendations of just about everybody. I'd had, long before, one of my trainers had recommended meditation to me. I hadn't gotten started with it, but then my doctor asked about it. My counselor asked about it. I had friends recommend it to me, and I said, maybe I'll try this out. I mean, what could it hurt to try short bursts of meditation? And I began trying to work this into my day. The thing that you find when you begin to meditate, I think for many of us, what I felt is you feel like, I'm not doing this right. You try to sit and meditate, and a lot of the time you're just like, am I doing this right? I used an app that's very popular called Headspace. I think there are many out there, but I did use a guided form of meditation to get me going. And a lot of what this app did for me was just to help me get along the way without worrying too much about doing it right. They give you some reassurances and kind of, it's not called meditation for dummies, but you can get going and get your training wheels going in the process without having to stumble too much. I still work on doing this every day. It very much helps me. I'm trying to work on always doing this in the morning to make sure that I get it done, because it is one of those things that if I don't do it right away, sometimes it never happens. So I'm not perfect at this. The things I'm talking about, I'm not perfect about. What it really is about is, if I've missed a couple days of meditating, just saying, okay, I'm not going to feel bad about it. I'm not going to blame myself. We're just going to start again. It's fine. There's no reason not to start again. It's just about not feeling guilty and, okay, that's all right. We are going to get going again. Similarly, I kept exercising. And for me, exercising is one of my ways to get out of the house. I work at home, I work alone, and to me, exercising is not only does it help my sleep, but I see other people, I get out of the house. Again, I'm not perfect with this. There's times when I'll miss workouts for a week, and I have to just say, okay, I'm gonna get going again. Not gonna bury myself in blame or shame. It's not about that, but let's just start again. Even though I know that if I skip a lot of workouts, my muscles will be sore when I restart again. And this has been since last spring, so I've had a lot of time to do progression. And one of the books that I listened to, that I did get free for using the Hoopla app from my library, I saw Jen Sincero's book on there. It's called You Are a Badass. And I said, hey, I'll give this a try. It's really popular. I think it's a really enjoyable book. It is just chock full of ideas. You may not like them all. It's kind of an interesting book to run through and sort of see what appeals to you. But she mentions one thing in there about attending church. And she's kind of gives you permission to attend church for selfish reasons. She says that being part of a religious community, and yeah, I'm opening the religious topic here. I'm not proselytizing, so I'm not recruiting anybody, I promise. But she mentions that this can make you a more powerful person. And I thought about it, and it's been maybe 30 years since I attended church for anything other than someone else's wedding. It's been a really long time, and I never pictured myself as being a regular churchgoer again for a variety of reasons in my life. But I looked around in Portland. I live in Portland, Oregon, in the Northwest in the United States. And there is a group called Unity. It's not Unitarians, it's a little different, but they have a Sunday thing they call Soul Celebration. It's open to people from all religious backgrounds. And one of the things that attracted me to it is that it combines both meditation and prayer. So I looked at this and I said, I'm gonna try this out. What's the worst thing that can happen? I might go once, I might not like it, I might not go back. I went once and I left there and I felt really good. That there was singing together, there was just sitting among other people. I chatted with one person during the, there's actually at this place, there's a break in the service where everybody walks around and says hello to one another. People who know one another may chat, but you essentially get to introduce yourself to strangers, which was a little terrifying as a new person, but there's no pressure because all you're really doing is saying, hello, it's nice to see you, and then moving on. It's not like you're at a loss for words. But I kept attending this. I've been going now for about 5 weeks, and I do find that there is a community of people there that I really connect with and that I really enjoy. And I am still very much surprised by this development in my life. While the medication definitely helped me, and I'm incredibly glad that I went to talk with my doctor, I think there's also many other things that I did need, and I very much appreciate that my doctor said, in addition to the medication, let's get you started with a therapist and working on ways that you can handle situations that involve anxiety as well as other things you can do in your life, because I needed the meditation. I needed this quiet. I needed more community in my life. I needed a lot of this to help change the way that I interact with the world. The way I've been in the past, I did tend to avoid a lot of social situations. I feared them because I knew that afterwards I tended to replay these conversations in my mind. I thought that was just because I was an introvert that I did that, right? I thought that was just that I just wasn't an extrovert and I wasn't, quote, a people person. As I, over the last year, I've been trying different things. And one of the things that I saw an opportunity, I was invited to a birthday party where I knew a couple of the other guests ahead of time, but I didn't know them very well. I knew the birthday girl pretty well, and I really like her. She's great. But, I didn't know a ton of people who were going to be there. And the people who I did know, right? I wasn't even sure that they might show up. So I was going to be on my own attending this party, and I would need to meet a lot of new people. I went. And by this point, I wasn't even too nervous about going. I was a little nervous, but I went and I had a great time. I really liked meeting these new folks. I didn't need to get drunk to like meeting them either. I had a great time. I stayed till the end of the party, which lots of folks had kids. I don't stay up too late usually, right? So luckily a lot of people were parents and they were like, yep, 10:30, we're done. But I stayed and I was so happy that I went. I had a great time. Afterwards, I didn't have all that replay in my head. And after that birthday party was one of the real times when I said, this is really good. This is really good. I really didn't like going places alone before. Past me, really anxious me, kind of felt like I always had to have a squad around me. I love having friends. I love going places with friends, but it was the kind of thing where if I didn't have people with me, I would kind of find a reason not to go someplace. And I did grow to look forward to meeting people alone at the Sunday service. And this is part of why I felt like this past week, I went to the SQL Pass Summit in Seattle. And this is an event where I do know a lot of folks from a work background, but I was going by myself. And in the past, I have often gone with other people. My partner, Jeremiah, was also my business partner for a while. I was used to having close people there with me. And last year was the first time I went on my own. And last year, past me, before I started thinking about anxiety or even recognizing that I had anxiety, I just thought I was an introvert. Past me did have a really hard time getting through it. I liked it, but it was just a lot of work to recover from the social encounter. So before I went this year, I did have some anxious dreams before I left for Seattle. The week prior, I had kind of some worried dreams, but it wasn't too bad. And I said, I'm having these anxious dreams. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to be able to have a good time. I think I can have more fun this year, though. I think these anxious dreams, they aren't a prediction. They're just me acknowledging that in the past I've had a really hard time. One of the things I did think about before I left was, I have a really hard time learning people's names, and you meet a lot of people at the Past Summit. And when introduced to new people or introducing myself to new people, I've tended to kind of berate myself if I can't remember a name or if I don't say the right thing. So I thought, well, I know one thing that may just help me have strategies is, here's another free book on my library Hoopla app. It's called How to Talk to Anyone. And it's just tips on making introductions, making conversation. This is the kind of book that past me would never have listened to. Past me did not like self-help books, did not like tip books. And this is just a book full of tips. And when I started listening to this book, I was like, okay, this really isn't for me. But I kept going, and there's a lot of value in this book. It's not that I took every tip. In fact, there's only a couple of them that are like, okay, I'm going to try that one. In part because I just don't want to take on too much at once, right? You want to try to add a few things to your repertoire right away. But the thing that was really great to it is it did help me just get into that point of view of being a little strategic about meeting others in a good way, having it be a little bit of a game. Can I find a way to get this person talking? Can I have a fun conversation with someone, and learn about them? Can I listen to what they're saying and hear indications of what they would enjoy talking about? The book and the tips I found really helpful just in terms of getting me in the mood to have good conversations with other people. I also found just little things. Once I got to Seattle, I flew. It's like a super short flight from Portland. And then I took the train from the airport to downtown. I was tweeting on the train, but I was also listening to music. I was headed to the Midnight DBAs. We're having a free community meetup. Everybody was invited, and I was hoping I could get there just in time for the end. So I was kind of tweeting like, I hope I have time to see you. And I was listening to music, and I found that I was really immersed in the music. Past me would have been kind of worried and fretting. What am I going to say? Even though I've met the McCowns before, and they're just wonderful, warm, friendly people. But past me would have still been worried about what I was going to say. But I was just enjoying the music and enjoying the ride in a way that before a big social event like that, I would have had a hard time before. I was making progress. And there were times throughout the week when I did get worried. It's not like anxiety totally went away. There were times when I did feel really anxious. And without even trying, there's some affirmations that they give at these Sunday services I've been going to. And Reverend Lisa, like her voice saying some of these affirmations at times just kind of popped into my head. And I felt better without ever intending it or, sort of realizing it. So not only did I present my 2 sessions, but I also did more social stuff at the Past Summit than I think I ever have. And so it's not like I'm a special person who's invited to like tons of stuff. In fact, every social event that I went to either was totally open to anybody or was something that I heard about from someone else and then found somebody who I could be like, is it okay if I come to your party? So I didn't completely crash the parties. I found someone who, was part of the team throwing the event and asked if it was okay for, can I get invited to this? Because I didn't get invited. But I went to the Midnight DBA's meetup, which was fabulous, even though I caught the end. I went to the welcome reception. I haven't gone to the welcome reception at Past Summit in years. because I'm always intimidated by this big wall of people. But I went by myself and I walked around the room, and it was kind of funny because there's this other fellow who I kind of ran into when we were going in, and we had just met the night before at the Midnight DBA Meetup. And we chatted a little bit, and then we broke up to, meet other people, find people we knew or meet new people. And then we met again. And then, we broke up and we met other people, had chat. And then we met at least 5 times that night. But in between, we met new people. We ran into people we knew before. And it was just a great time. I'm so glad I went to the welcome reception. There's free drinks. I didn't have any free drinks. And this is part of the freedom of, I didn't need any booze to have a great time. I mean, booze is nice. I'm not against alcohol, but I love that I just didn't even think about getting a drink that whole night, even though, there's free drinks. I also went to Microsoft happy hour that I was like, hey, can I be invited to this? Same thing with the Sentry One party, wonderful party. The Pure party, our Jennis Fernandez was actually nice enough to open up to everybody. He tweeted out, hey, come on down to the Pure party. And I did get, back at home at a reasonable time to get the minimum of sleep. And I don't always sleep easy when I'm on the road, but I genuinely enjoyed all of these parties, which for me is huge. I also stopped by the breakfast and lunch at the summit multiple times, and a couple days sat down and had breakfast with total strangers. I didn't know who they were. They didn't know who I was. But there was some room at the table, and I said, hey, is this seat taken? And just little things like, where are you from? What do you do most of the time when you're at work? What are you interested in seeing at the summit? I mean, kind of really basic questions, but I really enjoyed meeting new people, even if we never meet again, even if just that meeting at the, the lunch table or the breakfast table is the only time that we ever meet. It was super enjoyable. And I even found, I've decided that maybe I'll start playing name card bingo, because quite by accident, I had lunch with 3 different Andys on 3 different days. Andy Yun, who currently works at Sentry One, a great guy. We went for conveyor belt sushi one afternoon. I have never had conveyor belt sushi before. I now believe that any food delivered on a conveyor belt is better than if it's not delivered on a conveyor belt. It was fantastic. The next day, I was fortunate enough to have lunch with Andy Leonard, who is just an amazing guy. I'm so thankful for the discussion that we had together. It was so meaningful and just wonderful. And then the next day, just totally by chance, I didn't even realize that this happened until after it happened. I sat down at a table that had Lori Edwards and from Sentry One and some of her buddies, as well as Alan Kinsel and Andy Warren. So I was like, I got a triple play of Andy's, and maybe I can, maybe next year I can do Jen's. There's all sorts of different ways I can do this, and I never would have been able, past me would have kind of loved the idea of it, but not been able to execute it because I would have been tied to a group of people and they would have wanted to do something else, or, it just didn't work out type thing. I was too busy having lunch off campus. So this year, at the summit afterwards, when I was coming home, I realized not only did I have more fun, the fun it felt more meaningful because I'm not a perfect listener, but I feel like I listened better to people. I feel like I was more present and that I was able to be there with people more. And I realized on the way home, I have made just such huge progress in the last year when working on this. This isn't something recent either. Looking back on this is something that has happened, or something I've struggled with to more or less degrees. At times it's been better, at times it's been worse. But since adolescence in my life, this isn't something that's specific to my career now. This is something I struggled with in high school, in college, in grad school, but I just thought I was struggling with being an introvert or just some problem with myself. And I'm not saying that introverts don't exist. I'm not saying that that's a myth or anything. Absolutely not. What I'm trying to say is that I I misidentified myself at once, and that misidentification was hiding this big anxiety monster I had, which I don't have to have this relationship with anxiety like I've had in it, which at times has become a force in my life that's limited me. I don't have to be that limited by anxiety. And it isn't like I'm all better now. It's not like I did these 3 things and now I'm all better. It's really like I just see this different path to walk in life, this path where I meditate regularly, this path where I seek out meaning and I seek out communities that make meaning, and a path where I do think about what my values are and what's important to me in a different way than I did before. It's something where building this life is work. It's not like I took this pill and I'm all better now. Taking some pills were the start of me getting better, but it was just really a part of it. And I wanted to kind of draw this out. I was like, okay, well, how would I really explain this in pictures? And to me, it's like the anxiety was like this thing behind me, and I could feel its breath on my neck. Before I went into a social situation or, did work that I was going to publish, before I interacted with others, I would just feel this sort of tenseness and nervousness and fear, and it is like something that I couldn't see was there breathing on my neck. And when I started to work on this, it's not like I could see it directly. It's not like I could look into the face of my anxiety and be like, oh, there you are, I see you perfectly. But I kind of got tools to see it indirectly, almost like the ability to hold up a mirror and kind of glance at parts of it behind me, like, oh, okay, I see you do show up now when I give presentations. It's just sort of, I really notice you afterwards. Okay. And I also, in part by learning to meditate, learning to sit in silence, learning to build more of a calmness in myself, I also started in a way almost to be able to listen to parts of myself that I can't hear directly. And that in gaining calm, I'm building ways to help my anxiety understand that I'm not always in danger. Anxiety and the parts of ourselves that, come up and are like, okay, I'm going to give you all this adrenaline. I'm going to give you all this, I'm going to, more blood flow. I'm going to give you all these physical symptoms. They are there for a reason. If we're in an emergency situation, we may need all this stuff to be able to deal with it. But part of what meditation and going to my church services and growing and sort of seeking meaning have helped me build is more of a sense of when I need that to be present and when it's okay to be calm. It's given me more access to calmness, which is sort of like, it's not like I've killed the anxiety monster. It's not like I've banished it. It's almost like, yeah, it's still there. I still can't see it directly, but it has a nice little pet bed that it can nap on when it's not needed. And at times when it does sort of become aware and present and it's not an emergency, I have more of an ability and more techniques to just chill out a little bit and be like, hey, no, you can go, it's not an emergency. It's cool. You can go back to sleep now. And I drew this out in a progression and kind of listed some of the things that have worked for me. And I now have a poster called Befriending a Big Anxiety Monster that tells, my little journey through working with and finding a better place for my anxiety, finding a way that it isn't always breathing down my neck. And I am happy to say that not only was the past summit a success because I had a great time socially, but also I had morning presentations. I had 2 talks that I gave in the mornings. They were early, and I like that. I actually like morning talks. But, in the past, I would have been really exhausted afterwards, and I would have kind of crawled back to my Airbnb and been like, I'm going to wash some stinky clothes and just collapse until I have to go somewhere. But this time, I really enjoyed talking with folks who hung out afterwards to talk with me. And now we did work our ways to a part of the convention center where we wouldn't bother anyone in the rooms, but I really enjoyed hanging out and chatting. And I stayed there all day when those conversations broke up. I strolled down to the vendor area, wandered around, saw the booths, talked to people. I went to the community zone. I went to other sessions. I stayed around and I enjoyed it, and I wasn't exhausted. Now, teaching is still work. I'm not gonna lie. Like, teaching is definitely still work, and it's definitely pretty tiring, but it's just, it doesn't, those 1 hour sessions didn't clobber me in the same way that they have in the past. One day pre-cons, like teaching a full day by yourself is still definitely an exertion, but I do think that the next time I do that, I'm also going to recover much better. I'm going to be able to chill out. I'm going to be able to enjoy the experience more. And I think that also adds up to being a more relaxed teacher and just having a better class, because the more fun the presenter is having, the more fun the audience is having too. And I'm not sharing this as an oh, poor me. I'm not sharing this as an oh, yay me either. And there's nothing brave about me sharing this. I'm sharing this because I think this is probably fairly common. I don't think I'm the only one who has a big anxiety monster that breathes on the back of their neck often. As a person who's just gone through this year of really working on it, I just want to say it's really worth it. If you think that you, like, oh yeah, and you're not going to have the same symptoms I had. You're not going to have the exact same behaviors I have. But if you think like, I think I am impacted by anxiety, and I think I could make this better. I'm just here to say, like, nudge you in the direction of working on it, nudge you towards getting started on a project of saying, I want to be a more open person. I want to be a more calm person. I want to connect to others. I want to enjoy life in the moment more. And you really can do that. You may not need the same tools I used or the same processes I used. I do think that your path will definitely be different from mine. You want to find your path and seek on it. But I do think a great place, I started with talking to my doctor, and I think that really is a great place to start with talking with a medical professional. I was terrified to. And if you are afraid of that, please try it. Like, that is I don't have any regrets about anything really, I am a really lucky person. I really love my life. And my only regret, if I could go back, I would just reassure myself more. And I would say, don't be afraid to go talk to your doctor. You're going to be all right. Just go do it. Break through that barrier, get started working on it. And you really can make a huge difference in your life. So that's my story about the big anxiety monster. And like I said, this is a path I'm still walking, and I'm definitely not the chillest person in the world still by any means, but I am a lot more peaceful than I was a year ago, and I'm really happy about that. So I will be back with a more technical episode next week. Thanks so much for listening. This is Dear SQL DBA, and I'm Kendra Little. Bye-bye.